Hi, I'm Nathan, 34, and 6 months ago my family tried to turn me into a walking bailout fund for my brother's gambling debts. They pointed a fork at me over Easter brunch and told me I owed them $42,000. Not a request. A decree. Like I was some medieval tax collector sent to fund the court jester's next NFT circus. Now, I've burned that blueprint to the ground. And what came out of the ashes was me. Easter morning, I'd actually ironed my shirt. That's how hopeful I was. I thought maybe this year we could fake it just enough to get through a meal. I should have known better. I grew up in a house where love was measured by how well you swallowed disappointment. We're sitting at the table, breeze drifting in through the open window, talking about air fryers like nothing's wrong. Then Dad clears his throat, the signal. That low, deliberate sound that meant someone was about to get ambushed. Spoiler, it was me. Nathan, he says, placing his fork down like it's a gavel. Family means sacrifice. Now, I'd heard that phrase before. It's how they justified giving Joel a pass for everything. Failing college? He's just finding himself. Losing his job? Toxic boss. NFT pyramid scheme? He's just ahead of his time. But this was a new level. You'll be covering your brother's debts, Dad announced. Not asked? Announced. No questions asked? Joel? He didn't even blink. Just sipped his orange juice like it was a mimosa toast to my destruction. 42 grand, Dad added casually. Like we were talking about the weather. Mom nodded like it was settled. Joel shrugged. You make that in a few months, right? I swear, if you'd listened closely, you could have heard something crack in my chest. I didn't yell. Didn't throw the table over or break a glass. I stood up. Quietly. Pulled out my keys, placed them on the table. Then I said, if family means choices, I'm finally making mine. And I walked out. But here's the thing. They thought that was the end. That I'd storm off, cool down, and come crawling back like I always did. They didn't realize I wasn't walking away from brunch. I was walking into a storm of my own making, one that would tear their fantasy to shreds, expose Joel for what he really was, and show them all exactly who I became while they weren't watching. Because that morning, I walked out with nothing. But I was about to come back with everything. I didn't hear from any of them for 2 weeks. Not a text. Not a guilt-laced voicemail. Not even one of Mom's infamous just checking in emails that always ended with a passive-aggressive favor. I thought maybe, just maybe, they finally understood. Then on day 15th, my phone rang. Mom. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Nathan, sweetie, I've been worried sick, she said like she hadn't sat across from me silently nodding while Dad assigned me 42 grand in damage control. Then came the kicker. Can you come by the house tonight? It's about Joel. Of course it was. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe some part of me still clung to that stupid hope that they'd say, you were right. We were wrong. Joel's a mess. But no. Not even close. I pulled into the driveway just as the porch light clicked on. Joel's beat-up sedan was in the street. Not the driveway, interesting. Like he was already playing the part of the humble, innocent victim. I walked in without knocking. The air inside was thick. Not with the usual cinnamon candles or Mom's passive optimism, this was heavier. Denser. Like the house knew a reckoning was overdue. They were all waiting. Dad in his chair, arms crossed. Mom perched on the couch, twisting a napkin. Joel slouched like a sulking teenager on the recliner, even though the man was 31 and probably still using my Netflix login. Dad wasted no time. Sit down. I'll stand, I replied. Mom jumped in. We've had a situation. Joel looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Then, with the enthusiasm of a DMV clerk, he mumbled. I got into some legal stuff. Legal stuff? I said. Mom answered for him. He borrowed money from private lenders for his startup. Now they're threatening him. Startup, I repeated. The NFT thing? Joel scoffed. It's not a big deal. They came to the house, Nathan. Mom whispered. They know where we live. You let them in? I snapped. They didn't break in. Joel barked. It was just a conversation. I turned to Dad. So let me guess, you want me to fix it? Again. Dad didn't even flinch. You know people. You're in business. Maybe you can negotiate. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd asked me to do at brunch. Just a seamless pivot into make this go away for us, son mode. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I finally saw the truth for what it was. You think because I have a working credit score, I'm obligated to keep saving him? You always do this, Dad said, voice rising. You act like you're better than the rest of us. No, I said, stepping closer. I act like someone who cleans up after himself. Joel stood up, fists clenched. You're such a jerk. And you're a parasite. I shot back. You bring loan sharks to our parents' door, and I'm the bad guy. Mom tried to intervene, but I raised my hand. Don't. You made your choice. Then I turned to Dad. If I walk out that door, I'm done. Not just from this situation. From all of it. Don't call me. Don't text. Don't ask for another cent. Dad stood. If you walk out, you don't come back. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Then maybe it's time I stopped coming back. And I left. Again. But this time it felt different. There was no sadness. No regret. Only clarity. 3 days later, my bank called. Mr. Carden, the voice said politely. We just flagged a wire transfer for $1,400. Could you verify that? I hadn't made any transfer. We flagged this one, but a previous request for $6,500 went through last week. We didn't catch it in time. My blood ran cold. I logged in and found another $4,000 missing from my savings. All routed to the same LLC, one I didn't recognize, until I did. It was one of Joel's old startup shells. I stared at the screen, breathing shallow, hands trembling. He didn't ask this time. He stole. The kicker? He must have used spyware. A few months ago, at a family gathering, he'd asked to borrow my laptop. Real quick. I'd handed it over without thinking twice. That's all he needed. A minute of trust. That's what it cost. I didn't storm over to their house. I didn't send the evidence in a rage. I sat with it. Let it sink in. He didn't just steal money. He stole access. He betrayed me with my own devices. And if I told my parents? I already knew what would happen. Mom would clutch her pearls and say he was stressed. Dad would call me careless for letting him use my laptop. Joel would deny everything. Or worse, shrug and say, "You're overreacting." So no. I didn't go there for justice. I went quiet. I got an IT guy. A real one. Paid him to comb through my system. He found it, a keylogger buried in a Chrome extension. Installed the exact weekend Joel used my laptop. I didn't go to the cops yet. I wanted proof first. Undeniable, airtight proof. And while I waited, while the evidence piled up, I started preparing something else. See, they thought they'd backed me into a corner. They didn't realize I had been quietly building a door. And I was about to walk through it, and burn the whole damn room down behind me. The next few weeks were a masterclass in quiet fury. While Joel probably assumed I was licking my wounds in some overpriced therapy session, I was actually assembling a digital war chest. First step, lockdown. I changed every password, closed the compromised accounts, migrated funds to a new bank entirely, one Joel didn't even know I used. My IT guy, Simon, combed through my devices and found multiple login attempts from a single IP address traced to, you guessed it, my parents' Wi-Fi. But the real jackpot? Joel wasn't even trying to cover his tracks. His name was tied to an LLC that received the funds. His email popped up on vendor reroute requests. His browser fingerprint matched activity on my business dashboard. He didn't just steal. He impersonated. He redirected shipments. Tried to push through vendor changes under a fake assistant alias. Nate J. The J. I later realized stood for James, Joel's middle name. So, I did what I should have done years ago. I went to their house. This time, I came with receipts. Literally. A folder full of printouts, timestamps, transaction logs, IP traces, even a screen recording of the fake assistant email. Mom opened the door in her usual lavender robe, surprised but not enough to fake concern. "I need to talk to both of you," I said. She hesitated. Called for Dad. The three of us sat at the kitchen table, That same table where Dad once announced my brother's $42,000 bailout like he was reading a weather forecast. I slid the folder to the center of the table. "What's this?" Dad asked, already defensive. "Proof," I said. "Joel's been stealing from me. Bank funds. Client data. Vendor accounts. He planted spyware on my laptop. He impersonated my assistant. This isn't startup stuff. This is fraud." Mom blinked like someone rebooting. Dad flipped through the pages. His face tightened with each turn, jaw flexing, nostrils flaring. Mom finally found her voice. "You don't know that it was Joel. That right there. You think someone else used my laptop, logged in from his IP, transferred money to an LLC he owns, using credentials he stole the exact weekend he had access? He wouldn't," she whispered. "He did," I snapped. "And if I file charges, I'll prove it." Dad didn't say a word. He just stared at the folder like it might vanish if he glared hard enough. "What do you want us to do?" Mom asked, her tone turning sharp. "I want you to stop protecting him," I said. "Stop acting like this is just some phase or mistake. He's not lost. He's dangerous. And if he's willing to steal from me, what do you think he's capable of doing to someone who doesn't share his last name?" No answer. I left. No yelling. No grand exit. I just walked out. And that's when something inside me broke. Not with grief, with relief. I'd spent my entire adult life chasing their approval, swallowing every insult, every slight, every unspoken expectation that I'd always show up, always pay, always fix it. Not anymore. For weeks, I let the weight of it settle. Let the betrayal calcify into something cold and clear. Then I got a letter. Hand-delivered to my building's front desk. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, Dad's. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Neat. Stern. Classic Dad. "We don't understand your hostility. Family means forgiveness. Joel is going through something, and we hoped you'd rise above. You've changed, Nathan. This isn't who we raised you to be." He was right. It wasn't. Because the man they raised, he would have come back. He would have cleaned it up. He would have written another check and let Joel sink him like an anchor all over again. But that man? That version of me? He was gone. And the man who took his place? He was about to do something they never saw coming. See, what I hadn't told them, what no one knew, was that I'd been working on an exit plan for months. Not from the family, from my business. I'd been building a second company behind the scenes. A new venture. Something leaner, sharper. Fully digital, with a remote team and scalable tools. I'd been laying the groundwork quietly, like a man digging a tunnel under a prison yard. And now? It was almost ready. So I made a decision. I was going to walk away from everything they could try to cling to, the business they associated me with, the title they thought gave them leverage, the infrastructure Joel had already tried to hijack. I was going to leave the house of cards before it collapsed, and rebuild something they couldn't even see. I gave my notice to clients I no longer trusted. Told my core team the truth. We pivoted. Hard. I funneled what I had left, minus what Joel stole, into the new company. And as I rebuilt, I reached out. To every vendor Joel had ghosted. Every investor he'd pitched to under our last name. Every small business I'd helped back when I was still the successful son. Not to defend myself. To offer help. For free. Consulting. Templates. Advice. No strings. Because I knew what was coming. And when it did, I wanted to make sure that when they saw the name Nathan Carden, they didn't just think, "That's the guy with the shady brother." They'd think, "That's the guy who showed up anyway." And while I was building all of this, quietly, methodically, I got a text. From someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "We should talk. I know what Joel's been doing. And I think I can help." It was from my Uncle Victor. The one family member who'd always stayed out of the drama. Turns out, he'd been watching all along. And he had a few cards of his own to play. Victor always struck me as the family ghost. Dad's older brother, quiet, deliberate, the kind of man who showed up to Thanksgiving in a blazer and left before dessert. He never got involved in family politics, never raised his voice, never picked sides. Which is why, when I got his message, "We should talk," I know what Joel's been doing. I nearly dropped my phone. We met at a lakeside diner 30 minutes outside the city. Neutral territory. He was already seated when I arrived, sipping black coffee like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to this realm. When I slid into the booth across from him, he didn't waste time. I know Joel's been stealing from you, he said. No small talk. No pleasantries. I stared at him. How? I pay attention, he replied. Your parents don't. They never have. That shouldn't have hit as hard as it did. But damn. Victor leaned forward. You know he's been running scams, right? Not just against you. Small-time investors. Friends of the family. Neighbors. He used your name more than once. Claimed you were a silent partner. My stomach dropped. You're not the only one he burned, Nathan. But you're the only one who stood up. I swallowed. So why now? Why reach out? He gave a small smile. Not warm, approving. Because you finally stopped playing along. And because I think it's time someone leveled the field. Then he slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, gold. Bank statements, crypto wallets, LLC paperwork with my father's name listed as a manager, all tied back to one of Joel's latest schemes. Apparently, Joel had used Dad's identity to move money through a secondary business account. Most likely without telling him. I figured you should have this, Victor said. Do with it what you want. He paid the check and left me sitting there with my hands on the kind of leverage that doesn't just rattle family dynamics, it detonates them. Back home, I read every page 3 times. Cross-reference them with my own evidence. My IT guy, Simon, helped me dig even deeper. We found Discord logs, fake promo sites for bogus crypto coins, and a message thread where Joel bragged about using old man's info to make it look more legit. He wasn't just reckless. He was stupid. And this time, I had the upper hand. Still, I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. Because revenge is like chess. It's not about taking pieces. It's about forcing the king to kneel. So instead of throwing a grenade at the whole family, I began pulling threads. Quietly. First thread? The loan. Remember that $42,000 my parents said Joel needed for startup expenses? Yeah, that was a lie. The real reason he needed the money? Gambling. Turns out Joel was deep in with a couple of shady online betting syndicates, not the kind with flashy apps and Super Bowl ads either. The kind with untraceable payouts and very traceable consequences. When that blew up, Joel tried to win it back by launching a garbage-tier crypto coin with fake white papers and a cloned website. And somehow, he convinced several local investors to put in real money. Around $20,000 in total. Why hadn't they gone to the police? Victor gave me the answer. They're embarrassed. These weren't hedge fund guys. They were people your mom knows from book club. A deacon from their church. A high school friend of Joel's. They just want their money back. Quietly. So I made another list. Names. Contact info. Investment amounts. Dates. And then I started calling. Hi, this is Nathan Cardin. I understand you may have invested in something with my brother Joel. I'm not asking for anything, I'm just here to help you get clarity. Not one of them hung up. I didn't lie. I didn't cover. I listened. Took notes. Asked for documentation. Some of them even apologized to me. Like they'd been waiting for someone in the family to finally say, hey, this wasn't okay. I compiled everything, calls, emails, statements, into a master folder. Meanwhile, Joel was spiraling. After the crypto rug pull fell apart, he tried to rebrand as a financial coach on YouTube. Posted 3 videos, all featuring stock footage and motivational quotes ripped from Pinterest. Didn't last a week. The comments shredded him. Someone posted a screen recording of Joel at a barbecue bragging about playing investors like cards. Another found his old Reddit handle and linked it to a pump and dump Discord. The whole thing unraveled faster than his coin's market cap. He pivoted again, tried dating the daughter of one of my father's business associates. Thought maybe charm would buy him a second chance. It didn't. She dumped him the second the stories started swirling. And still, not a word from Mom or Dad. Even as Joel dragged the family name through the mud, even as his schemes started hurting other people, they said nothing. Did nothing. Until the day my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Mom. Just 2 sentences. "Nathan, we need to talk. It's important." So I listened. But I didn't call back. Instead, I kept working. I met with a local journalist Victor trusted, someone with a reputation for clean reporting and airtight sources. Gave them everything. Redacted the innocent names. Left in all the damning ones. Joel. The LLCs. The stolen money. The crypto fraud. The faked assistant account. I didn't need to say it was me. I just made sure the truth got where it needed to go. And then? I waited. Because storms don't arrive all at once. First comes the wind. Then the silence. Then the downpour. And oh, it was coming. The article dropped on a Tuesday. It wasn't some dramatic expose with flashing red headlines. It was a clean, methodical piece, titled, "The Rise and Fall of a Local Crypto Coach." No names in the headline. Just a quiet bomb planted in the middle of the business section. But if you knew, you knew. Within 2 hours, it hit local Reddit. Then Facebook. Then the town's community group, the one where everyone gossips about potholes and which bakery sells the real sourdough. Joel's face wasn't in the article, but his scam coin's name was. So was the name of the LLC. And the payout timeline. And most damning, the anonymous quote from one of his investors. He said his brother backed the venture. That it was family tested. That made me trust him. Joel had used my name. My business. My reputation. So I buried him with it. The fallout was fast. Violent. Beautiful. By sunset, Joel's coaching website was taken offline, most likely by Joel himself after the site's traffic went from 5 visits a day to 500 angry comments per minute. By Wednesday, the co-working space that hosted his workshops issued a formal statement. "We've terminated our agreement with the vendor known as Joel C., following reports of financial misconduct." The next day, his crypto tokens' remaining investors filed a joint civil suit for fraud. Then came the email I'd been waiting for. From Dad. "Did you do this?" "No hello?" No punctuation. Just those 4 words clenched like a fist. I didn't reply. An hour later, a text from an unknown number. "You ruined your brother. Hope it was worth it." I screenshotted it, then blocked it. Still don't know if it was Dad, Joel, or one of their enablers. Didn't matter. The next piece hit Friday evening, a news segment. Local anchor, clean cut, reading from a teleprompter with subtle disdain. "A warning tonight for investors. Local authorities are investigating several reports of fraudulent cryptocurrency activity tied to unlicensed businesses. While no arrests have been made, victims are encouraged to come forward." The screen showed a blurred photo of Joel at a trade expo. When I knew he'd crashed under a fake badge. He couldn't hide now. Joel vanished that weekend. Deleted every social account. Shut down his email. The coaching brand? Gone. Crypto pages? Dead links. All that remained was the noise. And in the middle of it, my phone lit up one final time. Voicemail from Mom. Shaky voice. Tight and tearful. "I hope you're happy. He's ruined. He came here crying. Says no one will talk to him. He said you did this. I don't know who you are anymore." I saved it. Didn't respond. Because she was wrong. I knew exactly who I was. I was the man who finally said no. The man who chose peace over pretense. The man who walked out of Easter brunch empty-handed, and came back with everything. And as I stood on the balcony that night, watching the city lights blink like distant stars, I didn't feel anger. I felt free. Because the storm had passed. And I was still standing. There's this strange silence that comes after a storm. Not peaceful. Not quiet. Just empty. That's what those first few days felt like. After Joel disappeared from the internet, and my parents retreated into their echo chamber of denial, it was like the entire family saga had just blinked out of existence. No more angry calls. No new threats. No last-ditch attempts to guilt me back into submission. Just me, my apartment, and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I thought I'd feel victorious. But what I felt was disoriented. When your whole identity is built around fixing, sacrificing, enduring, what do you do when no one is asking anymore? I stopped going out. Stopped checking my phone unless it was work-related. I poured every ounce of myself into rebuilding my company, the new one. The lean, streamlined version of my logistics firm that ran fully remote, protected by airtight security and ironclad contracts. But even that started to feel hollow. Until one night, I found myself staring at the old Venmo request I'd sent Joel months ago, back when I first caught him pulling money from my business. It was still marked pending. And for some reason, that cracked something open in me. That night, I reopened an old Google Doc I hadn't touched in almost a year. A rough draft of a mentorship program for first-gen entrepreneurs, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had the time. This time, I had time. And a mission. I called it the Boundary Grant. A little inside joke to myself. It wasn't flashy, just a 3-page website, an application form, and a mission statement. To support people who were taught to give everything, and help them learn how to build something instead. I sent the link to a few contacts. No big splash. No social media push. But within a week, I had over 40 applicants. People who'd been taken advantage of by family, by partners, by friends who said they'd pay it back later. Stories that sounded way too familiar. One woman had spent 3 years helping her boyfriend build his business. Turns out he was using her laptop to cheat on her and her credit score to fund his gambling habit. Sound familiar? Each story made me realize something. I wasn't alone. And I wasn't just fixing my life anymore. I was building something that could pull other people out of the quicksand. Meanwhile, Victor kept me updated. Joel was still off the radar, but rumblings of his scams had made it to a few legal offices. A couple of his investors filed formal fraud complaints. No criminal charges yet, but a civil case was gaining traction. I kept my name out of everything. Didn't need it attached. The work spoke for itself. And people noticed. 2 of my former clients, the ones who dropped us when the vendor reroutes happened, came back. Not just with business, but with respect. They told me the way I handled the aftermath had been impressively clean, transparent, professional. Funny how honesty feels radical in a world of gaslighting and deflection. I also started seeing a therapist again. Not because I was spiraling, but because I wasn't. And that scared me. She helped me unpack things I hadn't said out loud in years. Like how I used to sit in my childhood bedroom and listen to my parents laugh at Joel's antics, while I quietly balanced our checkbooks so we didn't overdraft. How I taught myself taxes at 17 because Dad refused to help unless it was Joel asking. Or how Mom once told me, "You're so responsible, Nathan. You don't need as much attention." That line stuck with me like a nail under the skin. Because that's what it always came down to, right? I didn't need them. So they gave me nothing. No praise. No backup. No shield from the storm. Just the responsibility to carry everything Joel dropped. And when I finally stopped, they called me ungrateful. That's the trap of being the reliable one. The safe one. They think you're unbreakable, so they don't flinch when they hit you. But I broke. And then I rebuilt. By month 5, the Boundary Grant had helped 12 people get legal consultations, 7 launch websites, and 3 secure microloans to start real businesses. One of them, a woman named Raina, messaged me. "I thought I was going crazy until I read your story. You made me feel sane again." That was the first night in a long time I cried. Not out of sadness. Out of release. Because for the first time in my life, I felt seen. Not as a wallet. Not as a fixer. But as a man who got dragged through fire and still found a way to build something beautiful. And just when I thought it had all finally settled, my name showed up in a Google alert. Someone had posted a think piece about the Boundary Grant on Medium. Titled, "When Boundaries Build Empires, How One Man Turned Family Betrayal into a Movement." They never named me directly. But the story was mine. And at the very bottom of the post, in italics, one sentence. "Joel, if you're reading this, I hope you know the only thing your brother ever wanted was peace. What you did? You didn't destroy him. You freed him." I didn't write it. But I knew exactly who did. Uncle Victor. That old ghost finally stepped into the light. And with him came the final piece of the puzzle. Victor didn't call. Didn't text. Just sent an email with no subject line and a single sentence. "If you're free Thursday, there's something you should see." It was a link. A meeting agenda for the Mid-State Ethics Committee, a private oversight board with ties to small business regulations, local banking, and municipal contracts. Not exactly headline material, unless you knew where to look. One item on the docket stood out like a siren. LLC misrepresentation and investor fraud, testimony review. The presenter? Victor Cardin. I showed up early. Neutral suit. No tie. Just a quiet presence in a small government building that smelled like floor wax and regret. The room was modest, long table, a dozen committee members, and maybe 10 seats for public observers. I took one near the back. Victor stood at the podium with a calm eye and indeed. No theatrics. Just documents. He handed out binders like they were invitations to a truth people had been avoiding for years. He laid it out, the fraudulent LLCs. The falsified signatures. The crypto scam. The forged co-signer agreement in my father's name. The one Joel used to secure a private loan of $25,000 without ever telling a soul. I wasn't surprised anymore. But the committee was. One man even muttered, "Jesus Christ," under his breath as Victor pulled out a copy of the loan contract with Joel's digital signature placed right next to my father's forged one. That was the moment I knew. Joel wasn't just a disaster. He was a criminal. And now, with Victor's help, he'd officially made the leap from family embarrassment to public liability. After the meeting, Victor caught my eye as he packed up. No words. Just a nod. Message received. The fuse had been lit. And the final detonation? That was coming fast. 2 weeks after the Ethics Committee hearing, it all came crashing down. Joel was formally charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and falsifying financial documents. The forged cosigner on the $25,000 loan in my father's name was the nail in the coffin. Victor had submitted everything. Quietly. Cleanly. Legally. I didn't press charges for what Joel stole from me. Didn't need to. The state picked it up on their own. The arrest didn't make national news. But in our town, where people still waved at their mailman and remembered when Joel played Little League, it was a reckoning. He was picked up at a motel just outside the city, living under a fake name. No resistance. No outburst. Just silence as they cuffed him and led him to a cruiser with a towel over his face. Coward's cloak. I found out from Victor. He called me, the only time he ever did, and said, "It's done." That was it. No victory speech. No "I told you so." Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about closure. That same day, I got a text from an unknown number. Short. Shaky. "You really did it. You turned on your own brother." It was from Mom. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just blame. I didn't respond. Because there's no conversation to have when someone refuses to stand in the truth with you. When your pain is inconvenient to their fantasy. And that fantasy? It had finally burned to the ground. My father, according to Victor, was devastated. Not over the fraud. Not over Joel. Over the publicity. Apparently, one of his longtime golfing buddies pulled their joint investment from a property deal after the arrest. No warning. Just a quiet text. "Can't be associated with that kind of mess." I'd say I felt bad. But I didn't. Actions have consequences. Silence does, too. It's been 6 months since Joel was sentenced. 18 months since Easter brunch. A full year since I walked out of that house with nothing but a car key and my dignity. And now? I've never been more whole. The Boundary Grant is thriving. We've helped over 70 entrepreneurs launch businesses without toxic loans or manipulative investors. I speak at events now. Me, the guy who used to sit quietly at the table, waiting for someone to notice he existed. I don't wait anymore. I build. My new company? Scaled nationally. Fully remote. Fully mine. No traces of Joel. No backdoors for sabotage. Just a tight, loyal team that believes in what we do. I reconnected with people I lost along the way. Old friends. A woman I once loved but left because I was too busy being the reliable son. We've had coffee. A few walks. No promises. Just space. And peace. God, peace feels like wealth you can't deposit. I still keep the voicemail. The one from Mom. I don't listen to it often. But I keep it. Not as a scar. as a reminder that loving people doesn't mean letting them destroy you, that being family doesn't make you property, and that sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. Because I walked out of that brunch a fixer, a scapegoat, a man shrinking himself for people who never truly saw him. And I came back. A wall they couldn't climb anymore. A gate they couldn't unlock. A man with boundaries and a life that no one else gets to control. And Joe? He lost the one thing he never thought he'd need. Someone who believed in him. So the next time someone tells you, family means sacrifice, you look them in the eye and say, exactly. That's why I stopped sacrificing myself. And you walk out. Just like I did. Without looking back.